Hello, my name is John DePerro. I'm the curator of the Cold War Museum. What I'd like to talk about today is one particular situation that we depict here, because this was a near miss to a nuclear war. And it was part of the Cuban Missile Crisis, but not the part that we normally see in the books. This part sort of happened in the background and has only recently been scienced where we've got resources where we know what happened. So this is all about a Russian naval captain. His name is Vasili Arkhipov. And Vasili probably saved more lives than any other human being in the history of the world. The Cuban Missile Crisis has broken out. There's a fleet of cargo ships coming down the Atlantic. They're preceded by some diesel-electric Foxtrot class submarines of the Russians. Each of those boats has got one nuclear torpedo on board. Vasili Arkhipov is hitching a ride from Russia down to Cuba. He wants to negotiate a treaty with the Cubans to park submarines in Cuba. The United States Navy knows exactly where these 4 submarines are, and they drop 5 destroyers on top of each of them. The subs go deep, they're underwater for several days. The batteries on the subs are down to 1%, so the temperature in the engine rooms are up in the 140-degree range. 3 of the subs surface, offer a surrender to the Americans. The Americans say, "We don't want your surrender, we want you back north of the line." And so those guys head north. The last sub, the B-59, that captain, he's Russian Navy, and he decides that this is the day that they're all going to die, and they're going to take as many Americans with them as they can. So he initiates a countdown to fire of the 1 nuclear torpedo he has on board. Arkhipov, it turns out that he's the rating officer of the captain of the submarine. So he gets a vote on the launch decision for the nuclear torpedo that's on that boat. The captain of the boat's got some problems with this high temperature. His crew is collapsing from heat exhaustion, so he floods the bottom deck of the submarine with 5 foot of seawater to pull the temperature down. Arkhipov says to the captain, he says, "We need to think about this firing this 1 nuclear torpedo. The Russian policy is any captain that has a round is authorized to fire that round on his own initiative if he feels adequately threatened." And they're pretty adequately threatened here. But the American policy is different, and the American policy is only the president can authorize the release of a nuclear round. And the Americans presume that the Russian policy is the same. When Arkhipov says, well, you're in the middle of the Caribbean, the Americans will immediately notice that nuclear round go off, and they will presume that the Russians, that Moscow authorized it, and within minutes, the United States will launch on Moscow. Moscow doesn't survive another half hour. Arkhipov says to the captain, we need to surface the boat, offer surrender to the Americans, and that's how it unfolds. We think he deserves a cake. His birthday is January the 30th, and we think every year there ought to be some drinks and some formal recognition that he probably saved more lives than any other human being in the history of the world.